from my perspective.
Yeah. And from NASA perspective, we went through our normal process. We did it in I would say, an accelerated time frame. We look at what we call non-conformances, anything that maybe any valve that didn't perform exactly per the spec or exactly per the right timing. We have certain witnesses that we do and inspection points that we go through as the Dragon spacecraft is built up. We missed a couple of those on the NASA side. We actually witnessed the heat shield installation, but we went and looked at all the build records. We have enough experience with the technicians for the heat shield assembly, and so we felt comfortable with that. Probably the one area that maybe was a little bit more risk, I would say, was the coating on these thrusters. These thrusters had flown a few more times than we had in the past. We went and analyzed that very carefully. We did a set of testing with a very similar thruster. SpaceX did it in McGregor, Texas, and then we went back and looked at the qualification data just to make sure we were good to go. So we went through our standard process, standard flight readiness review and commercial crew, agency FRR process, solicited dissenting opinions, asked our engineers if they were ready, and we felt very confident to go into the launch campaign.
And Steve, remind me, the fleet following or the witnessing of tests and inspections that you guys do with us, you often do that, you follow not only the capsule that's the primary plan for your mission, but also others. Was this one that you had already been following along with to some extent as well?
In following this capsule, obviously we had flown it before. Last time was on CREW-10, and we had started a little bit early to start looking at this capsule. And the capsule also has some upgrades. One of the upgrades that I talked about is a new energy modulator system. We talked about skip stitching on previous flights. We're flying an energy modulator on this particular vehicle that we tested at the Langley Research Center. There's a facility there that we can actually subject that energy modulator to all the loads and forces that we would see in flight. And we think this is a significant upgrade that we're going to go fly. So, as Sarah said, we followed the whole fleet, and we were in a good posture to go fly this vehicle.
Okay. Question here in the second row.
With Talking Space, question for Steve. Thinking about troubleshooting and problem solving, what would be a key, it seems like focus would be a key element to successful troubleshooting and problem solving. What would help you individually and the teams that are part of the organization to focus and have success each day, each challenge?
Yeah, I think, in engineering and spaceflight, I was just thinking this morning, I was texting a friend and he asked me if the launch was still on track. I said, yeah, the launch is still on track. Everything's working fine. And then I thought to myself, a spacecraft and a launch vehicle and the pad has millions of parts that have to work correctly, and we have to test those parts. And every single day, and I've been watching our team very carefully ever since the beginning of the year, and they've been focused. They've been going through the testing on the vehicle, been following along with the testing, doing independent analysis that NASA does. And so, we're very focused on this mission, CREW-10, and then we're also focused on the CREW-9 vehicle on orbit and making sure that vehicle is safe to bring the CREW-9 crew back as well. So it's really just attention to detail every single day, making sure that everybody does their job. It's a bit like a football team. Everybody has their job, whether you be an offensive lineman, a wide receiver, or tight end. You have your job to do, and you just watch to make sure that everybody is being diligent and asking the right questions. And the interaction between NASA and SpaceX is phenomenal. On the particular problem we had at the launch pad, the NASA team looked at the data, and SpaceX team looked at the data. We weren't quite comfortable, had multiple meetings back and forth on the data. Just today, with a NASA guide, one of our experts on the hydraulic system wanted to replot all the data one last time just to make sure we're ready to go fly, and he did that. And I talked to him before I went on console, and he was ready to go. So,
all right, a question here in the front row.
Yeah, Eliana Sheriff with Alien Space, and this question is for whoever can answer it. The current administration has made claims that the previous administration refused to bring home these Starliner astronauts despite an offer being made. Can you give us any clarity about this?
I think the short answer is I can't give you a lot of clarity there because those discussions I wasn't part of. So I can't tell you if they did happen or didn't happen. All I can tell you is NASA is an incredible nonpartisan agency. We get support from whoever is in office. Our presidents always care a lot about what happens at NASA, and it's great to see that that trend continue with our current president. He injects a lot of energy into our thought processes, and that's been helpful for us.
All right, let's go to the back of the room. Bill Harwood.
Hey, thanks. Bill Harwood, CBS News. For really anybody, this mission has taken on this whole thing with CREW-10 and getting Bush and Sonny home that I've never really seen with any other mission to this level. I don't know whether you call it hype or whether you call it, is it reasonable? What do you guys think about that? The fact that you're launching CREW-10, but you can't start a story about CREW-10 without putting Bush and Sonny in the lead. So, and which is fine with me. I'm not complaining about that. I'm just wondering what you guys think of that from a NASA perspective, the way this has taken on this life of its own.
I can start and let Ken comment. I appreciate all the interest in the mission. I appreciate the interest in NASA, but for us, it's really about doing the job that we do every single flight to get the CREW-10 Dragon spacecraft, the Falcon 9 vehicle, ready to go fly, to fly the crew that we have on that spacecraft to the station, and then execute the handover. And it's the same thing with the spacecraft that's there. Just a few days ago, we inspected the thermal protection system, just like we would for any mission, to make sure that it's good to go return home with the external high-def cameras on the space station and also the robotic arm. So we try to just focus on what's important, and what's important is really making sure that we can safely return the crew and safely get the crew there, and I try to avoid with my team getting too much into the hype, and they are so focused and doing their job. I'm so proud of both the SpaceX and NASA team for doing their job in this situation that's, as you said, Bill, it's a little different than what we experienced in the past, and I'll see if Ken has anything to add.
I'll just say it's great to see how much people care about our astronauts. If it was me, I might use different words. I think people use words to describe things based on their point of view and their frame of reference. For me, if I was going to describe the crew, I would describe them as professional, devoted, committed, really outstanding astronauts.
Okay, we're going to go to the phone line for our next question. Chris Davenport.
Hey, thanks very much for doing this. And Sarah, thanks for mentioning that piece of insulation foam that came loose from the second stage. You said this has happened before and doesn't pose a problem, but the words loose insulation foam is just going to generate a certain response given, and I'm just wondering if this is something that SpaceX is going to look to try to fix and prevent from happening again, or if it's something that just happens and is unavoidable. Thank you.
Yeah, so these foam tiles are mounted to our LOX dome, which gets very cold. The temperature changes drastically throughout the course of it successfully getting the vehicle into orbit. And so it's, I would say, expected that occasionally you'll see some liberate just because of the thermal environment that it's exposed to as it's doing its job to get to orbit. On our satellite missions, there's actually an adapter that covers these foam pieces that the satellite is mounted to, and so you don't see it as commonly then. But Dragon, which has a kind of open air trunk, you'll more commonly see these pieces coming out of stage 2. But this is a known risk that we carry in our system that we've analyzed and we've expected because we've seen it before. So.
And I think the good thing about the foam, right, at Falcon 9 Dragon separation, as Sarah said, that foam is contained within the trunk. Dragon's moving away, so in terms of velocity that foam could make contact with anything, it's very low. It's a very lightweight piece, and so SpaceX has assessed that, and we know that's not a concern. I'm sure that's one of the things that SpaceX will go look at, and as they always do, to see if they can correct it over time. But in this time frame, it's not like some of the foam kind of scenarios we've had in other programs.
All right, we will come back to the room after we take one more question on the phones from Joey Roulette with Reuters.
Hey, thanks, Daryl. And thanks, guys, for doing this, and congrats on what sounds like a successful launch. And I just wanted to follow up on Micah's question, and Steve, just kind of get like a quantifiable response or some kind of number on what the probability of loss of crew for this flight was, or how different that might have been from past flights. I mean, I think, you said that this was a kind of an unusual pre-flight process this time around, and so I just, figured it'd be good to get a number on if there was any kind of numerical difference on the probability of loss of crew for this flight that you guys accepted. Thanks.
Yeah. Oh gosh, I don't have the lost crew number that we use from the design phase with me, but there would have been no change in that essentially for this flight. We wouldn't have assigned a new loss of crew risk for this flight based on our process. Again, I felt like we started looking at capsule 210 endurance late last year a little bit because we thought we might be in this situation. So we started looking at some of the nonconformances. We started looking at some of the data. I mean, the Dragon vehicles, if you just compare them, they are all virtually identical except for capsule 206. The very first spacecraft, the prop system's a little different on that one. So in terms of, the safety risk for this vehicle, it really was unchanged from any other previous flight. So we didn't assign any new loss of crew number for the flight.
Okay, so the front row here, Will has a question.
Hi, Will Robinson Smith with Spaceflight Now. Thank you all for your time this evening. Question to Steve and to Sarah. In the write-up after the launch readiness review, it was mentioned that the leak issue that was present in B-1086 when it landed and had the subsequent fire, that was cleared to move forward with this launch, but that root cause had not been found yet at that point. Has that been resolved now? And did this flight provide any additional data that might help clear that? Thanks.
Do you want me to go for it? Or? Yeah, so we are still moving through our root cause of why the fire originated. But what we did ahead of the SphereX mission and the CREW-10 mission is we asked ourselves, of all the possible causes, could any of these have any correlation or connection to what will happen on the ascent phase of a mission, which is what matters for this mission. And in this case, the answer was no. We found that there would have to be 3 separate anomalous events all happening simultaneously in the first 2 or 3 minutes of flight in order to see anything like what we saw there post-landing. And so that got us comfortable with with it not being an elevated risk to this mission.
And SpaceX did a great job of looking at, I would say, forensics from that booster, the 1086 booster on the drone ship. They actually looked at a particular fitting that might have been a source of a fuel leak. It had a very interesting signature where it wasn't as. Of course, when you have a combustion event after landing, you're going to see a lot of heat damage components. This one wasn't, so they think maybe this particular fitting might have been leaking a little bit of fuel on that particular booster. We went and analyzed our booster. We did a static fire. We didn't see any fuel leaks. We actually sniffed for fuel to see if there was any present in any of the 9 engine bays. There was not. We actually went in on a couple of the bays and looked at this area where there was a fitting, and so that's a potential root cause. And then we looked at, the thing that you would be worried about if you had a fuel leak is a LOX leak during ascent. And the vehicle that we just flew was very tight during static fire. It was tight during all the testing at McGregor. And so that gave us rationale to go fly the flight. And of course, SpaceX resumed their other missions as well. And we learned from those flights.
Okay, the third row. Sorry.
Maybe I can just have one
Yeah.
last thing is one of the cool things about the design of Alpine is it's designed to be able to engine out, which is just another important part of all of this. If there were to be a fire to break out in one engine, for example, and we did actually see an engine out scenario, gosh, in the old days, I think it was CRS-1 or 2 to 10, 12 years ago, right? But that rocket had an engine out. It has sufficient scaffolding to isolate the fire to that single engine bay. And then the rest of the engines complete the mission as planned. And so that's, I guess, an additional layer of protection. If we were to see an event like this, we wouldn't expect it to propagate to the rest of the rocket.
Saparo with NBC News. Thanks again for doing this. This is for whoever wants to answer this one. I'm sure you're still seeing this as I am. What do you say to people that are still calling Butch and Sunny stuck or stranded, quote unquote, and calling CREW-10 a, quote, rescue mission?
You want to do that one, Steve?
I mean, First principle in spaceflight, you always have a way for the crew to come home. And Butch and Sonny have had a way to come home all the way back to the crewed flight test mission. If you remember, their vehicle, if there would have been a contingency, they were going to come home in Starliner first. Then we transitioned to the Crew-8 vehicle and then the Crew-9 vehicle. So they've always had a way to come home. To me, we are embarking upon a handover with two crews. And Butch and Sonny happen to be part of the expedition now. They've been there for a number of months, almost 10 months now. And they've executed spacewalks and they've done science. And so for me, it's a normal handover. Uniquely, this time we launched Butch and Sonny with a Starliner, and we're bringing them home on a Dragon. That's the only difference to me, and maybe Ken has something to add.
Yeah, if you look at it mathematically, by percentage of the original planned mission, this is the largest percentage extension, right? That's probably how we engineers will think about it in the future, is mathematically. There's been other really long extensions. We've had other people stay up there a really long time. But if you look at what was expected and what they ended up with, this one's was a big percentage of the initial plan. But every astronaut that launches into space, we teach them, don't think about when you're coming home. Think about how well your mission's going, and if you're lucky, you might get to stay longer. And it really is a gift when you get to stay longer in space. On my most recent flight, I did get to stay a little bit longer than we planned, and I was so happy that we did get to stay longer. The reasons were terrible that we stayed longer on our mission. But one of the positives about everything that happened was more time in space. And Don Pettit is up there right now. I flew with Don 20 years ago. The only time we ever came closer to an argument in space was when we argued over who might get to stay longer, because they were talking about having us extend for an extra 6 months and spend a year in space. Neither one of us got to, so we both got home. And then he eventually won that because he flew again and is still up there now.
Standing up, Ken.
Hi, thank you for doing this. I walked in a little late picking up the camera, so I'm wondering about the ISS leak. Can you report anything about that? A lot of people are wondering about that. Is it mitigated? Is it getting worse, getting better? What are you doing? Thanks.
Sure. So you're talking about the Paracal leak at the back end of the Russian service module. And that leak's still ongoing. Our Roscosmos keeps that hatch closed for most of the time. So the only time they go in there would be for accessing the Progress vehicle in order to get consumables or supplies out from a Progress vehicle, or in order to specifically do inspection or repair associated with that. We monitor the leak carefully and try to determine whether we have, additional increases in the leak rate. Right now, it's fairly steady, and so. But again, Crew does not go in that module very often. So we just take little short snippets of data here and there as we go. The investigation has been ongoing, and Roscosmos leads the investigation. We have our team as well providing assistance in terms of testing or analysis and providing data. But our team is working very closely with the Roscosmos team on that. I'd say the status has not really changed.
Are they doing any stress testing of the materials to see what it can take up to? Thanks.
So we on the NASA side we do have some of the Russian materials, and we are doing testing on those types of materials, various types of tests that we've pre-coordinated with our Roscosmos colleagues. Our Roscosmos colleagues also, they of course understand their material very well and perform some tests. So the answer is yes, and we are trying to correlate what we're seeing and go over those results as we have them with our Roscosmos colleagues.
Another question to the front of the room on this side, ABC News.
Thank you again. I'm not sure if you've spoken to them yet, but what's been the reaction to the successful launch by the crew, the Sonny and Butch team on the ISS? And how significant is it that we had a female pilot and a female commander on CREW-10?
So First of all, I think it's really cool that we had 2 females in the flight crew, 2 women in the flight crew. And I think it's cool that Ann's one of them because she was one of the first in a 2-woman EVA. I don't know. Sarah wanted to talk a little bit about that.
Oh, I was just telling them before this that I've got 3 daughters at home that I know were watching tonight, and so I was excited to see them on board, and thankful to them for a milestone that hopefully many more will follow after. So.
And Dina may have gotten something from CREW-10. I'm sure they're excited. Have you heard anything yet, Dina?
About coming home?
Yeah, about the fact that CREW-10's on the way.
Oh, well, I have not heard yet, but the launch occurred while the crew was asleep. They might have gotten up and taken a peek. I'm not sure. So I've not really heard anything yet, but it's possible that they were just quietly watching.
I suspect they're excited that there's new faces coming, right, and new people coming, and they know they're going to get to come home with see their families pretty soon. So.
All right, the question there in the 4th row, gentleman back there.
Hi, thank you so much. I'm Nick Valencia with CNN. This question is to dovetail off of an earlier question, but for you at SpaceX, Sarah. Ken may not have been part of the conversations for the initial offer from Elon Musk about bringing these astronauts home earlier, but I imagine as the director of Dragon that you might have been. I'd love to know what the specifics were of that offer, what was made, and to who was it made at the Biden administration in the White House.
Yeah, so I wasn't in the conversation either. I'm grateful for the leaders in our nation in the spheres of politics and policy. My sphere is engineering. But what I do know from almost 15 years of working with this exact team with Commercial Crew and ISS is that NASA is always looking at multiple options, every option available for any operation that they may go do, and then many contingency options for when the unexpected inevitably happens. And so I got to see that in this case, and we certainly brought all the ideas we had to the specifics of the operation. And then we were just thankful to be a part of the path that was chosen.
Yeah, SpaceX has been a great partner for us. Whenever we have something come up that's a little bit different on orbit, they help us figure out how to handle it, how to modify Dragon or come up with an extra way of dealing with our different contingencies.
Okay, let's go to the other side of the room now.
Yes, hi, I'm Bert Dick from the National Space Society. My question is for Dina and anyone else who might want to answer. It's always impressive to see the partnerships, the diversity, the collaborative efforts. We have NASA, JAXA, Roscosmos here. How do all those collaborations point to mission success and the objectives of the International Space Station? And also, I work with a lot of students, and for the others, what lessons can I share with students about the success and how this works?
Well, I'll just give you my thoughts on this. You know, the intergovernmental agreement that was signed many years ago and led to the International Space Station. You know, somebody had to think of that and put it on paper, and then as people plowed into trying to actually assemble and build the space station, you can imagine that there was a lot of discussions about how it would be built and who would have what pieces of that. But over time, it's just slowly gotten to a point where on a daily basis, it'd be just like you and I having a conversation. And we do this with our JAXA colleagues and our European colleagues and our Russian colleagues on the ground on a daily basis to operate the station. On board, the crews are having dinner together from different nations. When you're all working together on a common problem, you don't really see, I'd say, any differences. You see each other a little bit more as working toward the same goal. So I just say same as on Earth, when people are aligned on a common goal, that's really helpful. The ISS really is kind of a shining example of what you can do on a huge scale internationally if you're all partnered together. So I'm not sure if I answered all the questions, but that's my thoughts on it.
I thought Anne's words were really poignant when she got to orbit. I think that was in the webcast. Is that when Anne's first words down to the ground team were poignant about collaboration as well?
They were. Yes, they were. Mm-hmm.
All right, the gentleman in the second row has been patiently waiting.
Hi, thanks for being here. Nick Gibson with the Spokes Interview. I'm curious what the last few days were like for the members of CREW-10 following the delay Wednesday. Is there anything you do to help keep them prepared for the mission, and how do they pass the time?
I would say from my perspective, when we called the scrub on Wednesday, they understood, they know what it's like, that when you get in the Dragon, you get in the launch vehicle, there's a chance that you're not going to go that day. They got out. They were very professional, very complimentary. We did a debrief with them after that operation just to make sure there was nothing that we could do better the next time. That went really well. And then they followed kind of the issues and what's happening. Maybe spend a little time with each other and maybe study their procedures a little bit more. And then when it's time to go on launch day, you could tell Ann and the crew were ready again. So, and Ken, you've probably been there before. I don't know if you have anything to add.
I've launched on time before. It was rare, but we did launch on time even back in the space shuttle era. And then had missions where we scrubbed lots of times, scrubbed 6 times. And after a while, it gets old, but the first one's kind of nice because you get a chance to rest a little bit. Usually people are tired building up to the launch, and you can catch up with all the notes that you didn't write down, spend a little extra time with your family. So generally that first scrub is kind of nice, but I don't know, you'll have to ask the CREW-10 crew when they come back what they really thought about it.
Jessica Meir had reported out on our broadcast that she's friends with Ann McLean. She said they went to the astronaut beach house. So several members spent the day there with some of their family members. So thank you for that question. We'll take another one here on the first row.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Sawyer again with the NSF. This is probably for Sarah. So Crew Dragon Endurance, I know, had to swap out for the new capsule that wasn't ready. But from my understanding, this capsule kind of bounced around again from Crew 9 to Fram 2 to Axiom 4, now to Crew 10. Can you kind of explain why that was and what the SpaceX process is for determining what capsule for what mission?
I think some of those might not have been. I'm trying to remember the history now. I know that, let's see, we had a new capsule originally in preparation. It's now probably going to fly the Axiom mission that's coming up in May. We have 4 or 5 lanes of processing where we get to swap in capsules at different phases of their flow, and we usually have multiple in parallel or some awaiting certain processing steps depending on what their launch date is. And so it's relatively straightforward for us to switch what we're doing in what lane or move capsules around. And we've kept, as I think Steve already mentioned, we've kept our capsules so similar that makes that a lot easier to do. Whenever we roll in changes or upgrades to one capsule, we retrofit all the other capsules with those same changes. And so there's no capsule that's getting behind another capsule where we'd have a lot of work to do if we were to do a swap. We just have a fleet of 5 spacecraft, 5 crew spacecraft and 3 cargo spacecraft that could fly any mission that they need to. So.
Okay, time is almost up. Sorry, Steve.
I was going to say I'd have to go back and look. I think at one point the new capsule was you're testing my memory, but I think at one point we were going to fly it on Crew 9 maybe, and then we moved off of that new capsule off of Crew 9. But I would say that building a new capsule, it takes a lot of hard work and dedication, and building some new components up. We had built the first 4 capsules kind of in fairly rapid succession over a couple-year period, 206, 207, and then 210 and 212. And then now this one's a little lagging behind, so sometimes it takes a little longer when you got a vehicle that's lagging behind. But the thing I would most compliment our team and SpaceX on is the adaptability. When we looked at the manifest and saw that, hey, we'd really like to fly this mission in March ahead of the Soyuz handover, and we looked at Capsule 210, and our team started looking at it to see if we could go really get all the data reviewed. We pivoted together very quickly, and that is the beauty of having multiple capsules ready at multiple times for multiple missions. And we, NASA, appreciate that, and we took advantage of that. So,
okay, our time is almost up. We'll take another question from NBC News in the back.
Gina, this might be a question for you. 2 quick ones. First, you mentioned that 4 a.m. Wednesday might be the earliest opportunity for Crew 9 undocking. So is there a world where they would have splashdown? I know we don't know exactly where they're targeting, but would that potentially be the same day? What would be the soonest possible? And then the other question I had is, we know Elon Musk talked about the possibility of deorbiting the ISS as soon as 2027. I'm curious what your thoughts are if that's possible.
To take the first question is, I think it is possible we could splash on the same day. Certainly, very, very possible. Again, it just depends on the transit time associated with where the orbit lines up, and then the splash-on opportunity that we select on the Gulf Coast. And then I'll just caution you, though, that it could be difficult to find good weather on the very first day. So if you were even trying to pinpoint the day, I'm not sure we've really done that yet. So that would be the no earlier than day. And then in terms of ISS, we are following our policy for the current administration has us deorbiting in 2030, and that's where our international partners have agreed to. We have Roscosmos who's agreed to go to 2028, and they're working on, we're working with everyone on the deorbit process, more working in that general direction. So that's where we are with that. I know, Ken, if you had anything to add.
Just that I would say, Elon's all about going to Mars. He has been since he started SpaceX and before that, right? So it doesn't surprise me that he wants to focus on that. That excites me too. But what I'll tell you is our work in low Earth orbit, our work with ISS, the future work we'll do on our commercial LEO platforms, low Earth orbit platforms, is about Mars too. And one of the fastest ways to get to Mars is to do work in low Earth orbit. So I think we're going to have a lot more time with astronauts doing their work close to Earth in orbit nearby.
Okay, we just have a few more seconds, so we can grab one more from Will, and we'll wrap it up.
Thanks. I'll make this a quick one. Regarding the future of Dragon return, starting with CREW-10 when they are ready to come back, I know the plan is to splash off the coast of California, but will a Dragon recovery vessel stay in Florida as a contingency, or will both of them move to the West Coast for that? Thanks.
So we only need one vessel on the West Coast for the specific setup over here. We have 3 landing sites. They're all very close together. There's no need for with the panhandle of Florida, you kind of needed 2 to take advantage of the entire Florida coast within a certain distance that you could helicopter the crew and cargo to their final destinations. We don't need that over on the West Coast. We've actually already moved a vessel, Shannon, over to the West Coast, and it's undergoing final preparations for its first missions. And then we actually had a number of facilities, and then some that we're upgrading, some that we're building over here. You may remember we returned 20 Dragons in the early cargo program over on the West Coast, and so we got to leverage that. But yet we have entirely new requirements with Commercial Crew Program and science processing that we've benefited from these later contracts that we want to continue on the West Coast as well. So some new stuff, but also some heritage.
All right, thank you all for your questions today, and thank you to the panel for coming in and answering them. If you'd like to listen in to Crew Audio as they make their way to the ISS, you can snap the QR code that you see at the bottom of your screen. We'll be streaming mission audio commentary at nasa.gov/multimedia. And to continue following the CREW-10 mission, stay tuned to our streaming platform, NASA Plus, or online at plus.nasa.gov. We leave you now with highlights, a look back from suit up to launch.
CREW-10 is getting suited up, ready to go. Time now for the traditional card game. CREW-10 walking down the hallway. And here they come, taking their first steps outside as they prepare for their journey to the International Space Station. And we are off. The crew on their way to Space Launch Pad 39A. Anne McLean, Nicole Ayers making their way into their Dragon spacecraft Endurance. And here come our mission specialists down the crew access arm, Takuya Onishi and Kirill Peskov.
There they are rotating back.
Dragon, SpaceX side hatches closed. Ignition and liftoff. Go SpaceX, go NASA CREW-10. Copy, what else? Vehicle pitching down range.
Space Station. 1.7 million pounds of thrust now propelling Falcon 9 and CREW-10. We're continuing to get good call-outs on the first stage performance so far.